Welcome to the IVM Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Paodcast, presented by the Daily Pao.
This is Pranati.
Amit.
And we're from the dailypao.com, a Bombay-specific food and culture website. This is our weekly podcast, the Paodcast. Now today, we're just the two of us. We're missing our third colleague, Purva Mehra, who is unable to attend for personal reasons.
Her sister's getting married.
Anyway, so today on The Scene, in which we discuss culture in the city, we have Dr. Arnab Bhattacharya. Now, Dr. Bhattacharya is a scientist with the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, and we're going to be talking to him about the IFR's event series, Chai and Why. So stay tuned for The Scene.
The Scene.
So, Dr. Bhattacharya, we've been listing Chai and Why sessions every week. We have something called a weekend guide in which we list events that take place from Friday to Sunday. And this is something that we've been listing regularly, and I've actually attended one of your Chai and Why sessions at Prithvi Theatre. This was a while ago. But earlier you just had them at Prithvi, and now it's at Prithvi and Ruparel College. And these Chai and Why sessions, for those of you who don't have an idea of what they are, they basically, at these sessions, TFR scientists and as well as PhD students sort of discuss scientific issues, but for the lay people.
Yeah, we like to get people out of the lab and make science fun.
Right.
Make science accessible, informal. So now we're actually at 3 venues. First Sunday we're at Prithvi Theatre. The third Sunday we're at Ruparel College in Matunga. And if a month has a 5th Sunday, we are at Alexandra School in Fort.
Right.
So 3 venues, 11 o'clock, always free.
Okay. And now this is part of TIFR's outreach program. And you started Chai and Why in 2009. And this came about after a conversation that you had with Sanjana Kapoor, who was then the director of Prithvi Theatre, as well as Samira Iyengar. And that's how you started at Prithvi Theatre. But what sort of outreach was the TIFR doing before starting Chai and Why sessions?
So we've actually had... we do many things. So there are days where we call in school kids to TIFR, give them a chance to look at the labs and, play around and do some experiments out there. There are public lectures we arrange at various venues across the city where there's some eminent speaker speaking on a topic. We go out to schools to do lecture demonstrations, not just in Mumbai, but pretty much, in many places wherever people are going out, they generally tend to visit schools and colleges. And we have a pretty active rural science program where we go out mostly on long weekends to places, again, mostly in Maharashtra, about 200-250 kilometers from here, where we go out and do lectems in schools. We have night sky observation camps if the weather is clear around that time, which is in winter. So there are a lot of stuff that we've been doing. And of course, these are one-off things, not very regular. I think Chai and Why is the first event that has been really regular and sustained over a long period of time.
Right. And what kind of a response did you get?
So actually, initially when we started off, I was very tentative about this whole idea. I mean, I wanted to do a science cafe. I was in Europe, in the US. I had seen this concept of a science cafe, and somehow I knew that, something with the word science wouldn't work in Mumbai. Mumbai doesn't like science. I mean, science is that boring subject you do in school. So the name had to be different.
Is it just Mumbai or other cities as well?
Especially Mumbai. I think, for example, Pune or Kolkata has an audience which is much more sort of interested in science. I mean, if you have a science lecture in Pune, you will get a crowd without much of a thing. Here, you actually have to try to get a crowd. Of course, now because we are popular, we do have we're pretty sure that there will be at least 50 people who will show up no matter what.
Okay.
But so I sort of wanted to try this idea of a science cafe. I like the idea of making science fun. I mean, it's a very different. It's sort of making it informal, and I traditionally these are held at coffee shops and pubs.
Okay,
so pubs,
this is in Europe.
In Europe, I mean, pubs of course won't work here, but coffee shops also, none of them were interested. So it was just a random meeting with the folks at Prithvi, and they were sort of willing to try it out, and it was like a 6-month experiment. Like, let's see, because I was sure I had a bunch of friends. I know 5 people who would speak well apart from like me. I mean, we can do it. And after the second session itself, people said, why once a month? Why not twice a month? Prithvi, of course, couldn't give us a venue twice a month, so we moved to college. And then eventually, people wanted, we've got so many requests, do it in South Bombay, do it in central suburbs, do it in Thane, do it in Vashi. I mean, I'd have to just clone myself.
Right.
But, and I'd get beaten up at home if I stay away for more than 3 Sundays itself is hard enough. So
these are structured in an interesting way. You'll basically have somebody speak for about half an hour, and then you'll have a little break, which is where the chai element comes in. And then you have a question and answer session, which basically has no time frame, essentially, right?
Unless we get chucked out of there.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I heard Chai and Why, I mean, it reminded me of Tell Me Why. Those books that we used to like get as kids.
Terrible books.
But
actually, no, I mean, I
they were
quite
not
like
so
them.
terrible also, because,
I didn't like
anything
them.
which has nice illustrations sort of attracts you a little more than a boring school textbook, which is why I think, again, the whole idea of sort of making science a little more user-friendly.
Also, they had interesting questions. I mean, questions you sort of always wanted to, what is it? The things you always wanted to know but were scared to ask kind of questions. I mean, they had some nice questions in them.
And so the topics that you all have covered, like, do you want to tell us a little about them? Because it's not just, you'll also look at the news while choosing the topics, right?
Yeah, so there are essentially 3 kinds of topics that, I think work well. One is stuff in the news where we could get some aspect of science into it. So, some NASA satellite reaches Pluto, people are interested in it. The stock market crashes, people are interested in it. So if nobody would really like to hear about the Black-Scholes theory of, equations in financial mathematics. But if I can tell people that this is why the market crash happened, and there is some mathematics behind it, and luckily we have the person in TIFR who is an expert in this area and is willing to, talk about it, and you get a catchy title that will attract people in, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
So similarly, this 2G, 3G.
Yeah.
I mean, when it was in all over the papers, the only word associated with was scam. Nobody had an idea what was 2G or 3G.
What is 2G?
Yeah, I mean, these are different sort of protocols used by a mobile phone when it's communicating to the cell tower and, with each other. And, if we had a lecture on the fundamentals of wireless communication, nobody's going to wake up on a Sunday to come for that.
Right.
But we had this 2G, 3G, ye sab kya hai ji? And that was packed.
Yeah.
Right.
And when there was a song, Why This Cola Very D?
Yeah.
Right. So I did a session on the science of carbonated beverages, which was Why This Cola Very D? And
we listed this, I remember.
Yeah. See, puns to the rescue, as always.
Yeah. So this is one. The other one are topics which, you are certainly, whether it's in the news or not, you want to know. I mean, our next Chai and Why coming up is going to be on why is it important to forget?
Okay.
Why do we forget? How do we forget? And why forgetting is actually needed to build up memory, and how memories are built and lost.
Okay.
So, something like that will interest people.
Yeah.
And the
You
other ones...
also, talk about the science of the kitchen.
Yes, so these are our sort of summer specials for children, especially, young. So normally we don't really target very small audience, very young audience. We say high school and above, but we never enforce any age restriction. We find some of the kids ask the best questions. So we've never ever enforced. Also, India doesn't have childcare, so where do you leave your kids on a Sunday morning? So you might as well bring them along. But in summer, and so which is the vacation time in Mumbai, we ensure that even a 6-year-old will get something out of our sessions. So these have been very hands-on sessions, which is very different from science cafes in the West. We do experiments at Chai and Why. So we've done science on the beach, which was fun stuff you can do with sand and water. Science in the kitchen, science in the bathroom, science on the playground.
Can you give us an example of science in the bathroom?
Soap films, soap bubbles.
Right.
These are probably the thinnest structures you can make. A soap film is almost 1,000 times thinner than your hair.
Right.
It's such a beautiful way to experience it. And the colors you see, there's so much of science in that. And, you allow kids to blow big bubbles like big bubbles, a few feet across and all. It's fun. It's also fun.
So is that the third topic that you'll talk about? The third
kids thing. And the other one is we do festival-specific sessions.
Okay.
So around Diwali, it is always something associated with light or fireworks or things like that. Around Holi, it's always something associated with color. I mean, it's ranged for simple stuff like, illusions and like optical illusions with color to butterfly wing patterns in color, or even just simple stuff like why are things colored?
Right.
Why don't you see pink in a rainbow?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like asking you to answer all these questions right here. But, you were mentioning, these sort of how you explain things, especially to children. And just before we started recording, I asked you where your bag of tricks was. And you said you hadn't got it today, but you do indeed have a bag of tricks.
Yeah, so actually, I mean, given that I always like to have something with me that if somebody comes and asks, to show them some scientific experiment, I can do it. So I'm generally always roaming around with usually stuff that I can either give away to kids or it's so easy that they can go home and replicate it. So stuff like I have seeds of various sizes which almost correspond to the relative sizes of planets in our solar system.
For instance, as in like, so how?
So for instance, if you're, the reason is, the solar system is one thing which there are huge misconceptions in most kids. I mean, they go by this little drawing of circles, concentric circles they see in a textbook. But that's really very far from the truth. I mean, the solar system is so sparse and so empty. If your sun was like a big orange, the Earth would be a tiny mustard seed about probably 15-20 steps away. And on this scale, if the Earth is a mustard seed, Jupiter, the biggest planet, is just a little marble, 1 centimeter marble. And Saturn and Uranus and Neptune, the other two big ones. So Saturn is also like a small marble with a rubber band around it, represent the rings. Uranus and Neptune are like a white Vatana and a green Vatana in size. And for Pluto, Venus, Mars, you really have to hunt through rubber seeds. That's what I do, just grains of rava, and pick up the ones which are approximately, they're much smaller than the Earth. So you really tiny
Pluto
seeds.
is no longer a planet.
It's no longer a planet, but it's a very interesting object in our solar system. And as far as I'm concerned, when I was in school, it was a planet. So for me, the solar system sort of still ends at Pluto.
At Pluto. Right. Well, one of the reasons you mentioned in the note that you sent us that you started Chai and Why was to remove the fear people had of science, kids especially. So, I mean, could you just talk about how do you think science is taught in schools? I mean, why are kids scared of science?
Because we have, science is, what is science? Science is, at least to me, I think it's our efforts at systematically trying to understand the world around us. And the world around us could be the world, in a galaxy far, far away, or it could be the world inside a tiny cell in my body, or inside an atom, or whatever else. I'm just trying to understand the world systematically. And unfortunately, in school, we have reduced science to mugging up a set of formulae and trying to use those to arrive at a number at the end of some, exercise or a problem that you have. If I drop a ball here and this is what will happen to it, find the speed of it somewhere. I mean, we've lost the fun of science. We've lost the excitement of, the discovery process that science is all about. I mean, it's all about asking questions and trying to find out answers, and those answers generally lead to more questions. The curiosity and the inquisitiveness, which is actually inherent in kids. We've killed that in somehow, in the way we formally teach science, at least at some level.
Right.
Yes, I mean, not all schools are the same. Some schools are trying to make a difference, but still, I think overall the level of the way we teach science is pretty pathetic.
Okay.
And you have a pretty broad age group, though, coming.
Yeah, we get 7 to 70. We get all kinds of people.
And they're free. The other thing is that these are all free events, right?
We don't charge the public anything. I mean, it's all taxpayer money, right? I have a responsibility to tell people what we do with your money.
No, but the venues that you sort of work with, they've also giving it to you for free.
Yes. So this is we partner with venues. I mean, I could have rented a hall and had it there. But we would like to partner with venues who also see some value in having us over there.
So what about the folks at TIFR, the scientists and students that conduct these? How have they taken to these sessions, and what do they feel? I mean, what do they get out of it?
So initially, actually, it was quite I had to convince people, why don't you do a Chai and Why? I think you're doing something interesting. it is going to interest the public. People would say, I don't know, will they understand this? Now, of course, it's much easier because people know that there is a series that's very popular. People want to do Chai and Wise, and especially our students. And some of our students actually they are very good communicators. So one thing most people find that if they can explain something to a person who is not a specialist in the field, to the lay public, it actually helps them understand their science a lot better, because unless you understand something well, you can't really explain that to someone else.
Right, and that must be a challenge, right? Communicating science, because you take so much of it for granted. I mean, there are so many, ideas that you understand, but the layperson might not understand. So there's obviously a challenge in communicating in simple terms.
Yes, I mean also the mindset. It's like this. I'll give you an example. Okay, so we had a session on what are called high energy gamma ray bursts. Okay, these are some extremely energetic events that happen in the universe, which put out huge amounts of energy. Now, when I was talking to this person about the thing, it immediately occurred to me that I'm going to take this song title, which is सारे के सारे गामा को लेकर, and make it तारे के तारे गामा को लेकर. And she pointed out that no, it's not correct, because this energy is so much that it cannot be coming from a star. So that would be an incorrect title.
Right.
I said, okay, that's fine, but maybe the first line of your presentation could be, hi guys, thanks for coming. First thing, let me tell you that the title was just to get you in, but if you say high energy gamma ray bursts, people may not come in. So many scientists, for us, it's a big thing to say that, how much liberties can you take with your science? We are sort of trained that we have to be absolutely accurate, absolutely correct. Sometimes this sort of poetic license to play a little bit with what you're doing is a little difficult for scientists.
Right.
And it's been a while to get people to sort of, get into the mode that you need to be a little bit of...
You need to be a bit of a marketer
and a little bit of copyright.
Packaging is everything.
Yeah.
But how about in terms of the actual presentation now? Because you are simplifying science, how do you sort of, it's a fine line between sort of simplifying it and dumbing down. So how do you manage to do that?
So again, it varies from, topic to topic. In certain cases, you can only sort of give a very broad picture of what is happening. In certain cases, you can explain some of the details with some, analogies and examples. But I would say that most of the presenters who've done them have actually, they've achieved this thing quite well. I mean, most of the sessions have gone relatively well. Yes, once in a while there will be an issue about, how do I explain this? Or it's going over to someone's head. But I think at least getting the big picture in the first a little bit of time, at least if the people get the big picture of why is this important and why is it worth worrying about it, I think that itself is half the battle won. I mean, if you don't get the nitty-gritty, that's fine. And again, many of our students will rehearse this before they actually go and talk about it. And even if many of the staff and scientists have rehearsed it before, asked me to go through slides, look at it. We've made sure that we package it well, that people will understand it.
Okay. Well, would you say now that Bombay is more receptive to science after the success of Chai and Wise?
I would think so. I would think so. I mean, at least given the number of schools who want to come and visit us, the number of places that want us to host a Chai and Wise, and the number of people who've tried to sort of do similar things on their own. So we've actually sort of catalyzed other groups to do a similar thing. There is a Sawal Jawab that happens in Hyderabad. There is coffee with something that happens in Bangalore. So these are all sort of inspired by Chai and Wise.
Okay, thanks Dr. Bhattacharya. That's all for this episode of the Paodcast, and we'll be back next week.
Thank you, it was fun.
For more on what's happening in the city, read thedailypao.com. Also subscribe to our newsletter on the website. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. We're The Daily Pao. And you can find this podcast on the Indus Vox Media SoundCloud page, as well as iTunes, Stitcher and TuneIn.
If you like listening to the podcast, you can also check out Cyrus Says, hosted by the Cyrus Brocha. It's an irreverent podcast on current events, urban India, politics, sports, civic sense, traffic, kids, food, and everything that matters. Well, mostly.
Our podcasts bring all the boys to the yard, and damn right, they're better than yours. But you don't need to stand outside in the yard. Just follow IVM Podcasts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We might be on Tinder too. Just go ahead and swipe right.